Batman has a new butler, but if I'm being honest with you guys, I don't think she's a butler. I think she's an assassin. I think she's here to kill Bruce and Damian Wayne. And here's why I say that. Because of everything that happens over the course of this comic. So let's get into it, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. So what this does is this picks up with the Shadow Board. Right now, the Shadow Board is kind of this organization operating behind the scenes during Matt Fraction's Batman run, because this is issue number 11. And what they've been trying to do is to utilize the resources of Wayne Industries without Bruce Wayne actually knowing what's going on. And that's why the statement's made, you failed to convince Bruce Wayne that accepting military contracts is in his best interest. And then someone follows up and says, the operative you hired to resolve the issue outside of the Wayne Enterprises boardroom failed as well. Explain yourself, Mr. Blake. Now, Blake is on the Wayne Industries board of directors, and he was the one that originally pitched the idea of Bruce Wayne getting into military contracts. But as most of you guys know, when it comes to Bruce and how Wayne Industries runs, it's not always about the money. It usually is. Because of what good is Wayne Industries when it comes to philanthropy if there's no money to fund that stuff? But for him, it's really more about the principle behind the thing. So not all money is good money, if you understand what I mean. And that's why he took the stance of rejecting military contracts. And in fact, he wanted to focus on Annika Zeller's whole Crown of Storms project, which was this idea that Zeller has, and we'll see her here in a minute, where she was effectively creating this device that could be put on the heads of individuals and treating them for like their psychopathy, sociopathy. So in effect, treating some of the worst criminals in Gotham, Killer Croc, Joker, that kind of thing. And so that's why Blake says, Wayne may be intractable. It's true, but our operative is still within the project delivery window. I know they failed to close the loop on the first encounter, but there were extenuating circumstances. And so one of the guys on the Shadow Council kind of freaks out and says, we got ourselves a Bruce Wayne problem. That needs solving now. And so the follow-up statement, we've elected to reopen bids to the global talent pool, flood the zone with operative redundancies, and let the market decide. And so, in effect, this is just Matt Fraction speak for that scene from John Wick when there was a contract put on him and it was an open contract to anybody who could fulfill it. That's what you're looking at here, right? The goal is to either take Bruce Wayne out and then replace him as the head of Wayne Industries with someone else, or to force him into agreeing with them. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, the Shadow Council, and almost no one knows, Bruce Wayne is Batman. So you don't just like run up on this guy with a gun and tell him to give you his money, right? He's probably gonna have you drinking your food through a straw for the rest of your life. And so that's what these guys don't grasp, right? Like they're literally trying to strong arm Batman. And so it's like that scene from The Dark Knight, right? So like your plan is to blackmail a man who goes out in the middle of the night and beats criminals to a pulp. And so what you end up doing is picking up with Blake when he meets with Oyo. I think it's how you pronounce her name. I'm not very familiar when it comes to Japanese pronunciations, but he basically tells her, because he's the contact for her, and she was the assassin that originally went after Bruce. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that here in a second, but he basically tells her, look, I have news. The client has decided to reopen the job for general assignment. Thank you for your services, but they're no longer required. Now, as you can probably imagine, she's pissed. She's mad as hell. And she tells him, right, this is not how professionals operate. But she's told, this is not a guild job. You do not have guild protections. If the client changes their mind, they change their mind. You have no recourse here. Now, that's one of the things to know about the DC universe. You have different guilds, which is really just another name for an assassin union, for lack of a better word, which is to say, when someone contracts with the guild, that contract is exclusive to that person, and they have, within a reasonable amount of time, exclusive rights to go after that person. The individual who initiated the contract can't simply just change their mind because things aren't going the way they'd hoped. So in reality here, what we're talking about is this girl being a freelancer. And so that's why she doesn't really have any meaningful protections. At least that's what Blake thinks. Because while she doesn't really have the protection of the guild, she has the protection of being more capable than he is. And so that's why when he says, look, I can try to get you a kill fee as a courtesy, But the reality is the contract's up. She's just like, flood your fetid streets with assassins for all I care. I'll kill them all, just as I'll kill Bruce Wayne. You may not be a professional, but you've hired one. And so your courtesy is worthless. And she cuts him in half. She makes this guy's statement his last one, right? Kills him on the spot. And so at that point, we switch over to Penguin. Now, Penguin's one of the more interesting aspects of this story, particularly with what's been going on with Taurus and Minotaur. And I'll explain that here in a second, but I want to talk about this, right? I want to get through this because he says, I want to thank you for coming out to see me tonight. With the tragic losses that we're all dealing with and so forth, we've been at this a long time. We've been friends, we've been foes, and we've all made a lot of money between all the bullets and the blood anyway. And he says, and now we find ourselves in the thrall of a madman, not as partners, but prisoners. And how did it all come to this? We let it, is how. The money was too good, too fast. Who else could refuse? We are all of us richer by orders of magnitude for our association with the Taurus, and yet poorer for the blood of ours that he spilled so wantonly, trapped in his labyrinth of money. Remarkable young man, this Minotaur. New thinking, new ideas, and a new school. But now, and I bet I'm not alone in this, I'm asking myself, if any other of you hard-ass gangsters wants to show him what it means in Gotham City when we go old school. Now, here's what he's talking about, because it's kind of very easy to forget this in the midst of everything that's been happening in the Batman comics so far. As most of you guys probably know, when it comes to the criminal empires of Gotham, for the most part, it's always been every man for himself. Penguin, Two-Face, the Joker, the Riddler, whatever. And sometimes they all have alliances with one another, but a really good example of this is like the War of Jokes and Riddles, right? Which is a Tom King story during his Batman run, when we saw that in the very early days of Bruce becoming Batman, the Joker and the Riddler went to war, and pretty much all the villains in Gotham chose a side. Well, what we saw more recently in Matt Fraction's run was the introduction of the Minotaur, where instead of this guy treating Gotham City as this kind of kill box for any and everybody who was trying to make money, and whatever befell anybody when it came to collateral damage, just the cost of doing business, he decided to treat the criminal empire in Gotham as a business, treating it the way that you would run any corporation, Apple, Microsoft, Wayne Enterprises, the whole nine yards. And so what he started doing was grabbing all these individuals who had led these various crime families, including the Joker and people like that, and basically told them, we are all going to work in unison and we're all going to make a whole lot of money. And for anybody out there who is thinking about defecting, or anybody out there who doesn't see things my way, and then he revealed all the members of their families, right, closest members of their families, and executed them all just as a display of force so that these criminals knew what kind of person they were dealing with. And it kind of made sense, right? I mean, honestly, criminals only really understand two languages, bloodshed and money. And so in those two things, his message was communicated. But Penguin and all these guys, and losing people that are close to them, have all basically taken umbrage. And so that's where this is coming from with Oswald, right? This guy thought he could force our hand. And so let's show this guy what happens when somebody shows up in our town and tries to tell us what's what. And so at that point, you switch over to Annika Zeller. Now keep in mind, Annika Zeller is the scientist working on the Crown of Thorns, basically trying to cure villains and so on. But she is kind of the love interest of Bruce Wayne, but not really. The two of them went on a date, which was really more of an almost kind of like non-professional business meeting. But I mean, let's be quite frank, the two of them were basically going to start touching naughty bits at some point here in a little while. But what ended up happening is that when that assassin, Lady Oyo, originally went after Bruce, she was with him. Annika Zeller was with him, and she learned that Damian Wayne is the son of Batman. And so that's why Bruce shows up here and says, Dr. Zeller, I get that all relationships are complicated, but I have a complicated relationship with my son's mother. And I will say, this has actually sparked a bit of controversy online, but I kind of want to clear that up because I think people are misinterpreting what's being stated here. And so what he does here is he lays out his history with Damian and kind of spills the beans on how it all works. That he says, Talia al Ghul is an aristocrat of the old world variety. I was only ever a tourist in her world and an unwilling one at best. But that was where she raised our son, without my knowledge, and with the best of everything money could buy, world-class tutors, overseers, caretakers, all steeped in her unorthodox cultural traditions. She hid him from me until he was 10. Convinced his presence in my life would destroy me, she threw him in my lap and ran away laughing. It became my job to figure out how to both dismantle that time bomb and how to make it stronger. So here's where the controversy stems from. If you go back and you look at Batman Son of the Demon from 1987, it was essentially Batman in a consensual relationship with Talia al Ghul. And she literally tells him, right, let down your guard. For once, just be yourself, right? Just stop being Batman. And the two of them sleep together. Grant Morrison revisits this in the story Batman and Son, when he basically introduces Damian Wayne as the actual son of Batman. And Batman makes reference to this idea that he was basically drugged and he wasn't really a willing participant in all of this. And so when people look at this moment in the comic and it says, and an unwilling one at best, a lot of people are taking that and looking at the idea of Bruce and Talia and saying, this is what it's referencing. The problem with this is that there's a Bleeding Cool article where Grant Morrison talks about the whole controversy, taking Son of the Demon and then Batman and Son and comparing them together. And he tries to talk out of both sides. On one hand, it's like, well, I mean, we always talked about the idea that it was consensual and the story shows it's consensual. But I mean, I won't deny that Bruce Wayne, may have been drugged or something like that. And so he doesn't really provide like a definitive concrete answer, seemingly in the way that he talks about it, which is one of the reasons why the moment has been so controversial over the years, because the original story makes it consensual. The Grant Morrison story makes it seem like it's not, but at the same time, it seems like it is. So it's one of these weird scenarios. Regardless, when he talks about being an unwilling one at best, that speech bubble is over top of Ra's al Ghul in Batman. That's the moment that it's referencing, right? The fact that Batman never really intended to become a part of the whole landscape of Ra's al Ghul and Talia. He was drawn into it. He didn't really choose to be there. So I just kind of wanted to clarify a lot of that information that's out there. But to the part about the conception of Damian, honestly, it goes either way, just depending on which story you want to follow. A lot of people out there who are old heads like myself, we follow the 1987 story, but some people who are Grant Morrison diehards, they follow his version. But regardless, in talking about how it is that he wants to make Damian Wayne stronger, he says, I thought that you-know-who, so Batman, could help Damian grow in ways that a billionaire playboy couldn't. I'm not asking you to approve or even care about my choice, Dr. Zeller, but I need you to know it was a choice. My son needed me, and I couldn't leave him. And so he says, you're needed here, Annika. I just hope you don't leave. Now, this is an important distinction because one of the things to know about Damian, for those of you guys out there, the uninitiated who are new to comic books, you've heard of Damian, you don't know much about his lore. Yeah, when he was trained by Talia al Ghul, before he was brought to Batman, which I don't know that I would describe as she dropped him off on his doorstep and ran away laughing, he was a tried and true killer. He was an assassin. His answer to every crime was kill them, right? The way that you saw Ra's al Ghul in like Batman Begins, that was Damian Wayne in DC Comics back in the day. Batman's philosophy was to teach him nuance. Not every crime is equally egregious, and not every crime should be met with death. Just because a person jaywalks or robs a store does not mean they deserve to die the same way that someone like the Joker does, which God only knows why Batman hasn't killed him yet. And so a lot of the stories from Grant Morrison during his era of Batman, and a lot of the stories that have come after, when it came to Damian, were always kind of phenomenal because it was basically Batman relating to his own biological son and trying to decondition him of being an assassin and teaching him how to walk in the ways of Batman's philosophy. Don't kill people, Damian. It's perfectly acceptable to beat them within an inch of their life, right? And to have them fearful of ever leaving their house. Beating someone to the point that they become an agoraphobic. That's perfectly acceptable, Damian. Just don't kill them. But in all seriousness, right? Like trying to teach Damian not to kill everyone the way that he was taught by his mother. And so at that point, we switch over to Jack Dean and Houston. This doesn't technically have much to do with the idea of Batman's new butler potentially being a new assassin, but it is important to the overall story of what Matt Fraction is telling here. So when it came to Houston and Jack Dean, one of the things to keep in mind is that Vandal Savage, who a lot of you guys are aware of, is a huge villain. Right, he's a villain of the Justice League traditionally, but he's also immortal, and he's currently the commissioner of Gotham City. And Matt Fraction did a really awesome job with this. Basically, he was just like, look, in the life of someone like Vandal Savage, who will just live forever, deviating from whatever his grand plan happens to be, to just go over to Gotham City and just be like, yeah, Batman. I'm just gonna make his life hell for a little while because he's always defeated my plans. I mean, this is nothing, right? This is the equivalent of you just going to a bodega and grabbing a Coke. It does not disrupt your day. It does not create any problems, right? It doesn't get in the way of anything. And that's kind of what it's like for Vandal Savage. But one of the things that had happened is that Vandal Savage had actually planted evidence at a crime scene to make it look like Batman had killed a guy. And so Houston was recording it with his phone. And so what he ended up doing was taking that information to Jack Dean, who was a reporter. And then the two of them were trying to figure out what to do with it. Of course, as you can imagine, word got around to Vandal Savage. There is incriminating evidence showing that he's planting evidence at a crime scene. And that's why Jack Dean and Houston are currently here with Harvey Bullock asking for help, right? You have to protect us. Vandal Savage is going to try to kill us. Again, a bit of a sidetrack, but it is important to know that for the entire run of what Matt Fraction's doing, because that's likely going to come back, and that's going to lead, or at least contribute, to Vandal Savage's downfall. And so what ends up happening is you switch over to Little Tokyo with Batman, where he's just like, looking at all this stuff that's going on, specifically the actions of Lady Oyo, who's essentially cutting a swath through the city of Gotham, going after virtually everybody. It's been a long time since we used that phrase, but yeah, she's going after everybody. Batman's watching this, and he's getting information, at least what little he can, from the people who are here, right? Paramedics and so on. But that's when Oyo shows up. And this is one of the dopest moments in the story, because from this point going forward, the next few pages, there's no speaking. It's literally just the two of them fighting. And I always love moments like this in the Batman comic, because as soon as she goes after him, he fires off a grappling hook, right? His goal, it's like the art of war from Sun Tzu. Make sure that if you're fighting someone, fight them on your territory. Fight them in places you're familiar with. Make them chase you. Do not chase them. And so that's why Batman starts getting out of there as fast as he can to get to neutral ground. Because where they're at right now, they're on a rooftop. There's a great big huge event happening down there outside. There's a lot of eyes watching them. But more so than that, other people mean collateral damage. And so Batman's trying to get them to a safe place. As soon as they get there, it's on like Donkey Kong, son. She goes in with the katana, and Batman just grabs his cape, throws at her katana, and like yanks it out of her hand. But she's still got a second one, right? She comes at him, and Batman just like blocks it. And in that moment, breaks her katana, right? So now it's just a knockdown, drag out fight. It's a hand-to-hand fight between the two. And this girl is no slouch. I mean, she gets a kick across the face, catches him in the jaw, but in that moment, Batman just grabs her by the throat. So the fight's over almost as fast as it started, which really shows that this girl, when it comes to facing off against Bruce, painfully underprepared. And I doubt she ever would have been able to overcome him in the first place. But in this moment, he uses his gauntlets to shock her. Not enough to kill her, but to just kind of neutralize her momentarily. And he just tells her, Annika Zeller is protected. And that's when Oyo's like, who are you talking about? And that's when Bruce realizes it was two events happening at the same time. And I'll explain what that means here in a second, because in this moment, the cops show up here. Because keep in mind, for the last couple issues, it's been war against Batman. Vandal Savage has been taking shots at him everywhere he can. He's public enemy number one. So the instant Batman is sighted by the cops, they call it in. And the goal is to bring him in. The crazy thing about this is that it's a kill order, right? Like when the cops are there, Batman says, officers, this is the woman responsible for the Charnel house across the street. She killed everybody in there. If I let go, she does it again right here, and you'll be the targets. She'll cut you guys up into pieces, right? And so one of the cops is like, I mean, what do we do here? And Vandal Savage is like, what are you waiting for? Shoot him. And so that's where Batman's like, okay, cool. Yeah, they're going to pull the trigger. They're going to do exactly what they were told. And so he just like moves her out of the way because he's not trying to get her killed, throws out pellet bombs and takes off. And so that's when you pick up with his conversation in Damian, Bunker 01, because keep in mind, when it came to the traditional places that Batman hangs out at, right, Wayne Manor and the Brownstone and so on, these were all immediately targeted by Vandal Savage, right? He knew enough about Batman to know exactly where it is that he would operate out of. So the traditional safe houses were destroyed by Batman and Damian and the other members of the Bat family, all part of this grand plan they have to basically encircle Vandal Savage and then eventually bring him down. And so Damian, in sitting here, says, okay, so the 000s were hired to kill your new girlfriend by Hugo Strange. And Batman's like, not my girlfriend. And he says, but the Oyo was hired to kill Bruce Wayne by persons unknown. So it was two hit jobs that happen to take place at the same time. They both moved simultaneously while the two of you were on a date. And Batman's like, it wasn't a date. But what Damian's assessing here is accurate, right? It looked like it was one single hit. It looked like it was the 000 assassins going after Annika Zeller, as well as Oyo going after Zeller, and that Batman just happened to be there. No. Oyo is going after Bruce. The 000s are going after Zeller. It's just that Bruce and Zeller happen to be in the same place at the same time. And that's what Bruce acknowledges here. He says, maybe the Oyo interceded to save me from the 000s for herself, right? I'll ask her next time. And then he asks, what are you reading? And Damian's like, The Great Gatsby, which is one of the greatest books of all time. You guys absolutely need to read it. But this is one of those moments that I was talking about, right, over the course of DC Comics and how Bruce relates to his son, where Damian says, I read this when I was 6, of course, but I'm being made to read it again because, quote, you couldn't have understood it. And he says, but I understood it perfectly. I understood it to be slight and simple and utterly trivial. And Bruce is like, what about now, right? Do you understand the value of the book now? And Damian's like, well, I mean, now there's just something like Gossamer, right? But then he asks, like, how could there be? It possesses none of the complexities of the Russians or the soul of the classic Arabic writers, which to a degree is kind of true. But the beauty of The Great Gatsby is the idea that Gatsby himself was surrounded by people who used him. He had all the glitz and glamour, all the trappings of extravagance, but outside of like Nick, his father Henry, some servants, a postman, and I think Owl Eyes, nobody was there at his funeral when he died. They were all basically gone. And so that's kind of what Bruce seems to be hitting at here, at least with Vandal Savage, is that Vandal Savage is surrounded by all these people who all seem to be operating on his behalf, doing the things that seem to work for him. But the reality here is that it is a house built upon the sand. At the first opportunity, the world's going to turn against him, or at the very least, abandon him when he really needs them, that there is no loyalty among thieves. The problem is that in the midst of this kind of moral lesson, the doorbell rings. And so Damian's like, oh my God, it could be the Oyo. And Bruce is like, no, I doubt it, because assassins like that don't ring the doorbell. They don't announce that they're coming. They bust in through a window and just start attacking you indiscriminately. But Damian responds and he says, but we have cameras, sensors, and a dozen early warning systems. And so Bruce is like, yeah, and somebody just bypassed all of them and rang the doorbell. And so Damian's like, well, I mean, what are you going to do? And Bruce just says, I think we're going to open the door, son. That's what people do, right? But when they do it, people don't usually open the door like some kind of a creep. They do that. They like crack the door open and like peek through the crack. And they're just like, what do you want? It's the most sus behavior imaginable. And that's where you have this woman who's just standing there. She says, Mr. Wayne and Master Wayne, my papers from the Society of the Midnight Key, a new introduction in Matt Fraction's run, qualifications, service and training records, and letters of commission. I believe that you'll find everything in order and in accordance with my great uncle's wishes for your continuity of care. My name is Verity Pennyworth, your new Major Domo, but basically Butler, right? This is a new introduction here, but lest we forget, there is an open contract on Batman. There's an open contract to take him out. Now, seemingly, people don't know that Bruce is Batman, but just because the Taurus and the Minotaur don't know, doesn't mean other organizations don't know. I mean, keep in mind, the Court of Owls is still a thing, right? I mean, it's nowhere near as prominent as it was during Scott Snyder's run, but it's still a thing. And the Court of Owls knew that Batman was Bruce Wayne. So this is hardly the first time that we've seen something like this, which is why I say, keep your eye on this chick, right? This girl looks sus. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.